today's video, I want to talk about a vegetable that I think is essentially criminally underrated. Guten gardening, everybody! Well, we've talked about this vegetable in a couple of different videos in the past, but I really want to focus this video on the kohlrabi. It's something that I haven't talked about so much recently, but it is a vegetable that we really didn't start growing until about 4 years ago. It was our first time growing it, and actually that was the first time my wife, I, or my children had even tasted a kohlrabi, and it very quickly became a personal and I would say a family favorite. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about it today so you can, especially if you haven't ever tried growing a kohlrabi, so you can consider giving it a try. And for those of you who have grown kohlrabi, if you like it or you don't really care for it, we'd love to know your point of view as well. So go ahead and leave some information about your experiences with kohlrabi in the comments if you would. Now, when I think about kohlrabi, the first thing you should know about it is that it is definitely part of the brassica family, which means it's part of the same family as your cabbages, your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts, and so on. It's part of that same family, but the kohlrabi, in my opinion, is one of the milder tasting brassicas. Now, when I think of the taste of a kohlrabi, what I think of is a mild broccoli taste. So if you've ever eaten the stem of the broccoli, you peel down the stem and eaten that, that's basically the taste, but a crispier version of that, or a crunchier version of that, depending on how you eat it. That's what you get with kohlrabi. One of the things that's so interesting to me about that, though, is that we don't typically find kohlrabi, or don't as commonly find kohlrabi in our local stores. And I don't know if that's just because people are more unfamiliar with the kohlrabi and so are maybe less likely to try it, maybe they've never experimented around with it. I'm not 100% sure why that is, but we definitely don't see it as frequently as the other brassicas out there. And so one of the things that you can expect is if you've never tried growing kohlrabi, you might not have actually even had that much access to it. Now, there's a ton of different varieties of kohlrabi out there that you can experiment around with. There's the green type, there's a purple type. Most of the kohlrabi that we've grown has been somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 to 5 inches, I would say, in diameter. But it's actually a pretty substantial amount of food, given the fact that it only takes an average of about 45 to 60 days to maturity. Of course, that can vary depending on your climate, your growing conditions, etc. But within 2 months, you can get quite a bit of food from a single kohlrabi plant. But just like a lot of the other brassicas out there, you can eat just about every part of the kohlrabi plant. So, within 45 to 60 days, you have access to quite a bit of food. You can eat the bulb right above the soil level. You can eat the leaves that come out of there. And so it's a pretty quick source of nutrient content. I mean, brassicas tend to be pretty healthy vegetables as well. Great sources, certainly in this case, of fiber, of vitamin C, and so on. We've also grown varieties of kohlrabi that are the bigger, the more gigantic varieties. In fact, we did a video, I think it's been 2 years ago now, where we grew some absolutely gigantic kohlrabi, and because they were a variety that was meant to be gigantic, the taste of those was also still very nice. And the one thing you do have to watch out for kohlrabi, if you're growing them yourself, is leaving them to grow too long can create a woodier texture and can make it actually pretty difficult to eat. But that really is a good bit dependent on the variety that you're growing. Again, most of the time, within about 45 to 60 days, you can get out there and harvest a nice sized kohlrabi, and it's going to be absolutely tender, absolutely delicious. And one of the things that brings to mind for me is the fact that we experiment around with a lot of our vegetables when it comes to the way in which we consume them, or the ways, I should say, in which we consume them. And as is often the case for me, my favorite way to eat this vegetable, to eat kohlrabi, is roasted. A little bit of salt, pepper, garlic, and some olive oil roasted in the oven. And so I prefer that method. But kohlrabi is fantastic steamed. Kohlrabi is fantastic. Well, I'm about to say this, and you might not believe it, but it's also fantastic when it comes to eating as ice cream. That's right, we've actually taken some of our kohlrabi and made ice cream out of it. Kohlrabi ice cream. We've also eaten it in our green smoothies. And, you know, when you can take these fresh vegetables and transform them really into so many different culinary delights, I think that adds another reason, another emphasis for why you should try growing them. And there's also a type of kohlrabi, and I didn't mention this earlier when I was talking about timing. There's a type of kohlrabi called the quick start kohlrabi, which grows to maturity in just over a month. So realistically, you could be getting this nice nutrient-dense vegetable, this great tasting vegetable, even faster than I initially mentioned. And of course, you know, one of the other things we're looking for in vegetables that we grow, besides taste, and taste is very important, the timing, that's very important, is the ability to grow those vegetables in a variety of settings, a variety of ways. So we grow our kohlrabi in ground. We've grown it in containers as well. Actually, one of the nice things about kohlrabi is that it tends to be a cool weather crop, like a lot of your brassicas. And so if you have a cooler growing zone, it grows really nicely. We've grown it in shade. We've grown it in full sun. It definitely has done really nicely in a more shaded area for us. We've also grown it in the Kratky method, which would be a hydroponics method of growing kohlrabi. And so there are a number of ways, depending on the setup that you have, that I'm sure you could be successful growing these kohlrabi. So that's one thing to consider as well. Now, just like kale, Brussels sprouts, etc., the second year, if you let your kohlrabi go to its second year, if it can survive your winter, the second year it will go to seed. And so you can collect seeds just like you do a lot of your other vegetables. You can collect seeds and go ahead and continue growing more kohlrabi from that single plant. Well, we've also experienced something else with a second year kohlrabi, and this was fascinating to us. We had a kohlrabi in its second year develop 7 additional kohlrabi. I'll call it 7 heads, even though they're not really the head of the kohlrabi, but it created 7 additional kohlrabi bulbs from one plant. Never seen anything quite like that, and I'll tell you, they were absolutely delicious. So it's, again, a fun plant to experiment around with. And again, when I talk about all these things, it definitely comes back to grow what you will eat, grow what you love, grow what you'll eat. And this we've found to be, one, easily successful, and we've definitely, again, I'll emphasize it again, we found the taste to be fantastic. Even if you're somebody who maybe doesn't love the taste of broccoli or some of the other brassicas, because of that milder taste, this might be one that you would enjoy. You know, if you have the ability to gain access to it, to give it a sampling, you give it a try at maybe one of your local stores, maybe it's there, we recommend it so you can see a bit how it's going to taste. I'll say that the homegrown definitely is going to be preferable. It's definitely going to taste better. And one more thing, and I want to point this out. I've seen a lot of articles lately about vegetable recalls, and I don't want to spend too much time in this video on that particular, but you've probably noticed the number of vegetable recalls out there. And that's one of the things that happens whenever you remove your ability to control what you're growing and give it to someone else. You never know what those growing conditions are. And so this is just another one of those vegetables that you can go out there, easily grow yourself, and take back control of some of those extraneous possibilities. You don't know what's going on, because here you can have complete control over another nutritional, delicious vegetable. Again, I think it's underrated. I think that everyone should be growing kohlrabi. We'd love to hear your opinion on that as well. Hey, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.